Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be continuing on with this week's special selections, which is when people tell me exactly what they would like me to check out. Today's is going to be 65 Days of Static. I apologize, I cannot pronounce the requester's name. I am very sorry about this. It's just not in a language I can read, unfortunately. The band, though, is 65 Days of Static, and the song, they said I could either do Don't Go Down to Sorrow for an intricate melodic adventure, or Prisms for a concise butte. And we're going to go with with Don't Go Down to Sorrow. Intricate melodic adventure sounds fantastic. This one clocks in at 7 minutes. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, 65 Days of Static is one of the more requested bands. They're not as high up as, say, Car Bomb. Yes, I see you. Car Bomb is definitely the most requested band I have, bar none. 65 Days of Static is not that popular. However, I have seen this name pop up quite a few times in the comments, so I'm glad to finally have gotten around to checking this one out. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, grab a refreshing beverage, preferably water, stay hydrated, and let's check out 65 Days of Static. Very quiet opening. I'm really enjoying the intimacy of this, though. I love this triplet feel against the straight quarters in whatever instrument that is carrying the melody. We went from something very fluid, and this is an extremely rigid section. finally filling up the space. I'm excited. We got a nice 5 phrasing going on. With the 3 versus 2 on the 5, that's nice. Lots of players, a lot of chaos going on here as well. Really digging the accents on the snare. The delayed attack on those make it feel like it's on the upbeat. Well, it did. Now it sounds like it's failing. Hmm. Definitely gives me a lot to think about. When we started out the song, I kind of had my headspace in the title, Don't Go Down the Sorrow, some sort of a positive message to the song is what I was hoping for. Basically stay positive, don't succumb to, the darkness of sadness, maybe possibly in a way, do your mourning or, whatever you need to be sad, but don't completely succumb to that. Always remember that there's something positive about the future and, get that sadness out of your system. It's not something you should ignore, but don't go into the sorrow kind of idea. Maybe something along those lines. And so I think a lot of that kind of worked well with my journey through the song. It starts out fairly positive, I guess we could say. It's fairly straightforward. It's not exactly poppy and just sort of jumpy and extremely joyous, but it's not. It's a little uplifting, right? There's some positivity to the intro. And we kind of go through that for a bit. It's just beautiful, gorgeous soundscapes that we create with a lot of the layering that they do in the intro. I really love their use of dynamic. Um, on my mixer, we had a almost 50 decibel difference between their highest point and their lowest point, and I'm sure Unfortunately, some of you may not have actually heard some of the lower parts, especially if you're not using headphones. Maybe you're listening to this on a phone or something. You might not have heard some of the lower parts in the beginning, but just the way that they allow their music to be that quiet to where it's almost like I almost at the beginning, it was so quiet for so long that I almost actually cranked up the audio of the song in this recording to make sure that you guys could hear it. But I hung out. I was like, they're going to bring it back. There's no way that this mix is that low that I would need to increase the audio that much. And fortunately, I waited it out, and we hit up to the usual levels, the usual peaks that I like to have on this channel in my mixer. So yeah, they just allow their music to be that quiet, and it's just phenomenal. You don't really hear that too often. I mean, a lot of bands play with volume dynamics, sure, quiet versus loud. But I don't think I've ever seen any band that lets their music sit that low for that long to where you either kind of have to turn it up or you just don't hear. Sometimes you might not hear any of it. Sometimes you just miss out on the nuance of it for being so quiet. And I just love the gutsiness of that. They, they just allow their music to be that quiet, and it really allows for some of the louder sections to have that extra oomph as contrast, because we just listened to music so quiet for so long. Um, but I think that opening section was a piano, and I'm kind of pulling between piano and like acoustic guitar. I don't remember. I was wrapped up in the overall sound of it. That individual, I wasn't really doing much individual listening there at the beginning. It was just kind of sitting in that sound they were creating. So, but I think it was like a piano or whatever. Just gorgeous stuff. The opening was just beautiful. And then we hit the start of the chaotic section, which I'm going to label it as the chaotic section. It's not chaos like we've seen in some more experimental or artsy bands that we've checked out so far. It's just, it uses the 5/4 time, and then every instrument kind of has its own rhythmic home beat, which is kind of a weird way to say that. Um, I'm sure as it's written, and maybe once you're used to playing it or listening to it, you can hear that everything comes together on a downbeat, one of the bars. But to me, it feels like every instrument's beat one is a different beat of the bar, and it creates a section that feels very disjointed. And it's intentional. 100%. I believe this was intentional. Um, because we're going to get into this, but the emotion of the chaos and sort of disjointedness, we're going to touch on that though, I promise. Um, but I call it chaotic because it feels like every instrument is doing their own thing within this already unusual time feel. Um, I mentioned that we were in 5/3 doing a 3/2 grouping. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you get that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And it has this sort of rush at the end of it. So you have the sort of like lackadaisical beginning, and then you rush at the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and you get those that double pulse. Back to back on 4, and then on the next one, and those emphasized beats being closer than 1 and 4 makes the beginning feel a little bit more sluggish, and it makes it feel rushed at the end. That's the whole purpose of the 3 versus 2 when you're doing any sort of 5 phrasing. Um, and I think they use that to great effect here, that it feels disjointed. There are moments when we feel like we're pulling back. There's moments where we feel like we're rushing. There's moments where we feel like we don't know what's going on. We have instruments that are that drum, the snare part I talked about, that I was really interested in the accenting. It felt like they were doing like eighth notes, but doing like the offbeat of 2 and then the next on beat, and it was this weird like shuffle gallop, but it was on offbeats, and it was definitely not matching up with the lead melody that was going on, which was pretty much sticking to the downbeats in that 3 versus 2 feel in the 5. So it just feels completely out of place, and a lot of like really chaotic elements going on with concepts like that, where we already have this, disjointed. Are we moving fast? Are we slowing down? Is this sort of a laid back section? Are we moving? Are we picking up pace? We already have that sort of ambiguity with the 5/4. And then, like I said, on top of that, every instrument's kind of doing their own thing. Some are playing right on the downbeat, some are doing weird offbeat stuff, some are, whatever. Just it's chaotic, and the overall tone of the section has shifted. Like I mentioned, the beginning is not joyous, but it's definitely uplifting in a sense. There's definitely beauty to it. There is some sort of positivity shining through, and this section kind of dips a little bit into the darkness, all right? And we start to see some chord progressions and note relationships that are not entirely positive. It's not a heavy dark section. It's not like we've drifted into doom rock or doom metal territory with just these really heavy sorrowful chords, but there's still some darkness to what's going on here, and the chaos continues to unwind. We add more and more instruments, some of the rhythmic qualities get more and more complex, and it's almost like a spiral, like an anxious spiral or a sorrowful spiral. Um, if you've ever experienced one of these where maybe you're doing just fine one moment and then you think about something that makes you sad, and that makes you think about something else that makes you sad, and you're just spiraling down, and you can't seem to escape. That's kind of what I feel in here. It's a vortex. No matter how you were feeling prior to this section, this song is pulling you in. Its chaos is pulling you in. Its darker tones are pulling you in. You can't really escape this section. It will, take a hold of your attention 100%. It is a very interesting, especially compared to the simple beauty that came before it. This is a more for lack of a better word, interesting section as far as complexity goes. Your mind is naturally going to be drawn towards it. And I think it's really cool that we exit this with a little bit of the positivity, but it's not that beauty that we started with. It's more of like a techno thing. We have almost like a MIDI drum doing some highly technical fast hits. It definitely could have been a drummer using a drum pad, but it has that MIDI drum sound, and it definitely has more of an electronic, rhythmic quality to it. The way that certain hits run together, and just the overall compositional patterns that are displayed there. But it's still the musical quality still has a bit of a darkness to it, even though it is not as dark as the chaotic section was. And like I said, if you've ever started to spiral mentally, and you just kind of keep falling down this pattern of thinking about sad things or whatever, um, even when you come out the other side, maybe you snap out of it, maybe somebody, calls your attention, and you're forced to abandon that because, life coming back at you. You got your responsibilities or whatever. Um, you're still not 100% positive. You still have that mindset that you were sinking into sort of in the backdrop. Um, and I like how it keeps some of the qualities from the beginning while also embracing some of the chaos that was the rhythmic chaos that was being brought up in the chaotic section. And it's just a really cool, as far as my journey with it was, it's a really cool musical interpretation of, the sorrowful spiral. And like I said, I could be reading into this. I like I said, I did go into the song based on the title, "Don't Go Down to Sorrow," but this is what I got out of it. it is a story of a person who is fine one moment and one thing sets them off and they spiral and keep thinking about things that continue to set them off, and then they're kind of brought back, but they're not 100% back to the way they were. That sort of emotional state continues to kind of tinge their present. And I've been there. I don't I can't speak for everybody. I can't say everybody's been there, but I feel like it's a fairly common human thing. Maybe not so much for everybody at every like I can't say by the age of 40 you've experienced this, but I'd wager to say that most people have experienced this at least once. And I think it's very human to make a song about this. Again, I could be completely wrong here. I could be completely reading into it, and kind of implanting my own personal experiences, and that's fine. That's what art is, right? Art is half of what's presented and half of what's injected into it by the viewer. But yeah, I am definitely interested in 65 Days of Static. I can see why they are so highly recommended. And I'm kind of really like I'm almost tempted to check out the other song that was requested. Um, but I'm also like I'm good where this has taken me. I don't really want to spoil this, and I don't know if I want to dive back into something akin to this. It was definitely a bit of an emotional experience for me to go through that. So yeah, interesting stuff. Um, that's my thoughts though on 65 Days of Statics. Don't go down to sorrow. This is where you guys come in though. I gave you my thoughts, you give me your thoughts. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what your ideas were about this track. If you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, if you got the same experience, that same sort of theme going on that I did. Let me know. Above the comments is a description box if you're interested in any links adjacent to the channel, such as a Patreon link, my Twitter link, my Twitter profile, whatever those are called, and a link to my blocked videos if you're interested in seeing what YouTube does not want you to see. It's all in there. It's also a like, a subscribe, and a bell button. If you could push all three, that would help out the channel immensely. And if you're interested in getting notifications, maybe you enjoyed what I did. Not unlikely. Not unlikely. I'm gonna boast a little bit. People tend to enjoy what I'm doing, so I don't really get that many negative comments. If you enjoyed what I did and you want to see more of it, push all three of those. That's how you go about getting notifications. YouTube will take care of you. They'll be like, hey, this dude just dropped another one. Here's a link. Check it out. YouTube's got your back, but you got to push those buttons. You got to push those buttons. All right, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC with another Critical Reactions, doing another special selections. 2 more to go, and the premium special selection list is done. I'm so excited. We still got 70 on the regular list to go. It's going to be a while before I open up submissions for special selection again, but getting the premium done, that's it's going to be a little weight off my shoulders. I'm excited. All right, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. And until then, you guys stay safe out there. Keep being awesome and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.